We are on the record for hearings in the matters listed in the North Dakota Industrial Commission hearing docket for February 23rd, 2023. I'm Stephen Nelson, hearing examiner for these hearings. We are at the hearing room for the Department of Mineral Resources, Oil and Gas Division, and it is 9 o'clock a.m. On the docket, the following matters will be continued or dismissed. Case number 29808 will be continued to March. Case number 29869 will be dismissed. Case number 29872 will be dismissed. And on the supplemental docket, case number 29885 will be continued to March. The administrative docket starts on page 3 with case number 29873 and goes through case number 29884 and includes the docket supplement with case numbers 29885 and 29886. These cases will be heard in the next room with Michael Zisch. Audio recordings of the cases on the administrative docket will be placed on the Oil and Gas website by the end of the week. If you wish to appear in one of the matters on the administrative docket, please appear in the next room. If there's opposition to the matter, it will be brought back into this hearing room to be heard, and your statements and evidence will be taken. We will begin with case number 29815. Application of Cobra Oil and Gas Corp. For an order authorizing the recompletion of the Harris Federal 130 well, file number 8337, in the Wanigan Field into the Madison Formation at a location approximately 2,340 feet from the south line and 820 feet from the east line of Section 30, Township 141 North, Range 102 West, Billings County, ND, as an exception to the statewide well location rules to create and establish a 320-acre drilling unit comprised of the east half of Section 30, Township 141 North, Range 102 West, and such other relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota. And I'm appearing in case 29815 on behalf of Cobra Oil and Gas Corporation. We plan on calling 3 witnesses in this matter. The first witness will be in the area of land, Mr. Seth Hadley, Hadley. Our second witness will be a geologic witness, Mr. Craig Reynolds. And our third witness will be an engineering witness, Dre Parr, P-A-R-R. And all 3 witnesses will be appearing by telephone.
All right. Mr. Hadley, can you hear me?
I can.
Just a second here. What hit headset or what? I don't know. You should know how to do this, but got it on the speaker. Remember headset? Okay, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Hadley, one more time. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Seth, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Seth Hadley, Hadley.
And Seth, by whom are you employed?
Cobra Oil and Gas Corporation.
In what capacity?
Senior landman.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
No, I have not.
What I'd like you to do, Seth, is briefly highlight for the hearing officer and the commission staff your educational background and work experience.
Sure. I received my business degree in energy commerce from Texas Tech University. I am a registered petroleum landman. Spent the first 10 plus years of my career as an independent landman, working with and alongside both privately held and publicly traded oil and gas operators, mostly across the southern United States. Past 5 years, I've been with Cobra Oil and Gas Corporation, acting as the senior area land manager, managing our day-to-day operations in our North Dakota asset.
And Seth, in preparation for today's hearing, have you made a thorough study and review of all the relevant land matters?
I have, yes.
And have you prepared or had prepared under your control and supervision some exhibits you intend to sponsor?
Yes, I have.
We'd offer the further testimony of this witness out of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
So, Seth, we're getting a little bit of feedback. Do you have this hearing on your computer or something in the background?
No, I have it on my phone here.
Okay. Maybe you should
Sorry
just,
about
could you
that.
just turn off the speaker of your phone and then just talk into the phone?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. We'll see if that helps. Thank you. Seth, let's go to the packet of exhibits for this case, and let's go to what's been previously marked as Exhibit 1. Can you identify Exhibit 1 for us, please?
Certainly. Exhibit 1 here is our area reference map reflecting the proposed location and spacing unit highlighted in yellow, that being the east half of Section 30, Township 141 North, Range 102 West, Billings County, North Dakota. This map also shows all producing, abandoned, and dry hole locations within the area. The highlighted spacing area is common ownership, both minerals and leasehold. And Cobra's ownership within that proposed spacing unit is 75% working interest.
And the Harris Federal well that's depicted on this particular exhibit, that was an existing well that you want to recomplete into the Madison Formation, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and typically for Madison spacing or even statewide location rules, it's too close to the quarter line, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's the reason for this application, is that correct?
Yes.
No further questions of the land witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Seth, this is Bruce Hicks. You indicated that it's common ownership in the east half. Are the minerals completely owned by the federal government?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none, we can move on to Mr. Reynolds. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Craig, would you state your name for the record, please?
Craig Reynolds,
And Craig, by whom are you employed?
Cobra Oil and Gas Corporation.
In what capacity?
I am the Vice President of Exploration.
And you're a geologist by education and training, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I've practiced for 41 years as a petroleum geologist.
And have you testified before the commission previously?
No, I have not.
What I'd like you to do, as Seth did, is briefly highlight for the examiner and the commission staff your educational background and work experience.
Yes, I've had a Bachelor of Science in Petroleum Geology and have practiced since 1982. I'm a professional geoscientist in the state of Texas, number 3083. I'm an AAPG certified petroleum geologist, number 5063. I've testified before the Texas Railroad Commission, and I've also testified in front of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy.
And Craig, in preparation for today's hearing, have you made a thorough study and review of all the relevant geologic matters concerning Cobra's request in this case?
Yes, I have.
And have you prepared or had prepared under your control and supervision some exhibits you intend to sponsor?
Yes, we have prepared a structure map that is submitted as Exhibit 2.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Thanks. Craig, let's go to the Exhibit 2 that you mentioned just a moment ago, and I'd like you to identify it and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
Yes, this is a structure map on the Sherwood member of the Madison Formation. And structurally, we see a directional change that occurs in the contours perpendicular to the regional strike against what is an existing field to the southeast, which is the Knudsen Field. And the change in direction of the contours created a structural nose that may be part of a closure. The Sherwood member in our Harris Federal 1-30 was drill stem tested in the Sherwood member, and it recovered oil in the drill pipe and sample chamber. And the borehole being located within the possible closure would certainly trap oil in the porous dolomite of the Sherwood member. And before we abandon this borehole, we certainly want to test the Sherwood member.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Craig, the interval that was DST'd, that is the same interval that's productive out of the Knudsen Field?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do you recall what the pool over in the Knutson area was defined as?
Well, it was generally described as the Madison, but it produced from the Sherwood member.
Okay. And so you'd be intending just to target something in the Madison formation?
And it's the identical Sherwood interval. So it appears that there's a down dip structural trap here with the closure, and we just, before we abandon this well, which had produced out of the Red River formation, we want to test it.
Right, so I guess what I should have asked was, as far as the defined pool definition, what was established over in Knutson would be sufficient for what you're planning to target here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none, move on to Mr. Parr. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Dre, state your full name for the record, please.
This is Dre Parr,
And Dre, by whom are you employed?
Cobra Oil and Gas Corporation,
What capacity?
as an operations engineer.
And you've testified before the commission previously, is that correct?
Yes,
And you've had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
yes.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Thank you. Dre, let's go to the next exhibit in the packet. It's been previously marked as Exhibit 3. Can you identify Exhibit 3 and then discuss the more pertinent information that's contained on this exhibit? There's a lot of information. I don't expect you to go through all of it.
Correct. So yes, Exhibit 3 is a proposed wellbore diagram of the Harris Federal 130. Shows the existing Red River perf with the plan to squeeze 90 sacks of cement below with a cement retainer at 12,100, spot 10 sacks on top. And then we'll go ahead and set a balance plug across the Bakken interval. And then we'll come up and recomplete the Sherwood interval from 9,197 to 226.
All right, then let's go to the next exhibit, Exhibit 4. Once again, can you tell us what that exhibit is and then discuss what's contained upon it?
Yeah, so this is the economic evaluation for the recompletion of the Harris Federal 130. So going from top to bottom, we have our assumptions with initial production at 40 barrels a day, economic life of 176 months. This strip was ran on January 13th. Proposed recompletion cost of $266,425. At the time of strip running on January 13th, the average oil price over the course of the 176 months would average out to $59.46 a barrel. Differential off of NYMEX in this area is $4.50 a barrel, so our average effective oil price will be $54.96. The NRI to the 100% is 80.9% royalty interest. So this gives us our remaining reserves at 12% initial decline with a 0.5 B factor at 112,600 barrels of oil. And then going down to the revenue side of it, this would give $6.18 million of gross revenue, minus royalty burden of $1.18 million, comes out to $5.07 million, less our 10% taxes of $500,000. Revenue before CapEx LOE will be $4.5 million, minus the recompletion cost of $266,000, minus the average lease operating expense over the course of the asset of $1.8 million, will give us an undiscounted, unrisked net revenue of $2.3 million. The AFE to cost for drilling, completing a new well would be $2.9 million.
So accessing these additional reserves that you predicted are there, the 112,000 barrels, it makes sense if you can re-enter this well, but it probably is not an economic venture if you had to drill a new well. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
So in your opinion, granting this application is going to prevent waste because it's going to result in recovery of reserves that otherwise would not be recovered. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Will it also protect correlative rights?
Yes, sir.
And will it also prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Mr. Examiner. We'd offer exhibits 1 through 4.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Dre, do you anticipate that you will encounter any H2S in the Madison?
Historically, yes, there will be.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, additional question for Craig real quick. Craig, do you know if this well had any logs run on it?
Yes, it certainly has. In the event that this is a successful procedure and we come back for spacing, I was going to supply all the information at that time on the interval.
If you could, at this point, just provide a supplemental just with a type log identifying what your target interval would be on that type log. That's enough for this case.
Absolutely. I'll send it to our attorney, and he can amend it to the exhibits.
Okay, thank you.
Dre, this is Bruce Hicks. That well's been shut in for some time and will soon become an abandoned well. What's your timing on recompleting it?
We would like to do this April or May of this year, sometime second quarter. This was proposed to recomplete last third quarter of 2022, but then we ran into spacing issues.
Okay, and when the well produced from the Red River, no oil, or excuse me, no gas was ever sold, I assume that you're not going to be able to connect to a gas gathering system.
That is correct. There's no gas gathering system within the near area, and this well does have an Ajax, so predominantly majority of the gas is used to run the pumping unit and the heater treater.
Okay, if you do have significant H2S, the health department would have guidelines on flare stack height to disperse the burned, the flare to regulate that. So just be aware of that.
Yes, sir. We will do our appropriate testing.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none, there was a request for a supplement there, Mr. Bender. What kind of time frame do you think we need?
Let's do, is March 1 a business day?
That's Wednesday.
Okay, March 1. There's a possibility we'll get it in sooner, but
Sure. The record will remain open until March 1 for supplement. Anything further in this matter, Mr. Bender?
nothing further.
All right. That will conclude the hearing in case number 29815. Moving on. Case number 29808. In the matter of a hearing called on a motion of the commission to consider the termination, reduction, or any other appropriate action of the Tracy Mountain Tyler Unit, Billings County, ND, operated by Northwestern Production LLC, to consider the temporarily abandoned status extension requests for various listed wells, and to review the TMTU bond amount required for the operation of said unit pursuant to NDAC section 43020315 and such other relief as is appropriate. This case is continued to March.
Before we leave that case, Lawrence, there was a case or two on the docket yesterday. Are you aware of the freshwater request to convert a couple of those wells to freshwater?
Yes, I am aware of that, and my client has been working with the landowner to get those wells in a position where they can be turned over to the landowner to recomplete them as freshwater wells.
Okay, and since you're continuing this to March, I believe we were also continuing 29-866 and 67 to March.
Were those the cases having to do with freshwater?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
What's that?
Yeah.
That would be good.
And with that, case number 29808 is continued to March. Moving on. case number 29868. Application of Spotted Hawk Development LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Van Hook, Bakken Pool, McLean, and Dunn Counties, ND, so as to create and establish an overlapping 3520 acre space unit comprised of Section 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and the north half of Section 21, Township 150 North, Range 91 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 8 horizontal wells on said proposed overlapping 3520 acre space unit, and such other and further relief as appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this matter, case number 29868, on behalf of Spotted Hawk Development, LLC. We intend to call 3 witnesses in this matter, and I'll get you the exhibits. Do you have a set for yourself? I don't know. You can take one then. The rest of her. Intend to call 3 witnesses in this matter. First witness will be in the area of land, Mr. Sam Brown. Second witness will be a geologic witness, Mr. Joseph, is it Aducci? Aducci. ADDUCCI. And then our third witness will be an engineering witness, Mr. Randy Nessett. Mr. Brown and Mr. Aducci will be appearing by telephone, and Mr. Nessett is with us in the hearing room.
All right. Mr. Brown, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Sam, would you state your full name for the record, please?
My name is Samuel Brown.
And Sam, by whom are you employed?
I'm employed by Spotted Hawk Development, LLC.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission? Well, excuse me, in what capacity are you employed by Spotted Hawk?
I am as a land professional.
Okay. And in that capacity, you've had an opportunity to testify before the commission previously?
Yes.
And you've had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert, is that correct?
Yes.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Sam, let's go to the packet of exhibits. I assume you have a packet in front of you. I've distributed a packet to each one of the commission staff and the hearing officer. Could you turn to what's been previously marked as Exhibit 1, identify Exhibit 1, and then briefly describe what's contained on that exhibit?
Yes. Exhibit 1 is, it shows the area of interest from a far out view. And so what we are going to be discussing today is a spacing unit that is in section 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, north half 21, T150, 91. It'll be a 3520 acre spacing unit.
Okay, and then let's go to Exhibit 2. And as you did with Exhibit 1, identify Exhibit 2 and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
Exhibit 2 is the pole unit, a closer view of it, and we are showing the working interest in this unit as well as the ownership of the surrounding unit to the proposed unit. In the proposed working interest of the 3520, Spotted Hawk has an 82.3% working interest.
Okay, and I know it's not depicted on this map, but perhaps you could just briefly describe, you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but describe for us the mineral ownership as well under your proposed spacing unit.
The mineral ownership is a mix of tribal, a lot T, and C, with approximately 96% of the mineral ownership being tribal.
Okay, so the green inside your yellow box is tribal, is that correct?
Correct.
And the blue,
As well as the,
go ahead.
yes. Yes, the green and the blue are all tribal mineral ownership.
Okay. You said there was some allotee in here. How is the allotee designated on here, or is it not?
The allotee the allotee and the C are in the purple area.
Okay. Why do you distinguish in Section 18 tribal as blue versus the green area as tribal? Can you tell us what the difference there is?
Yes, in Section 18, the tribal minerals are, the working interest is held by Devon versus in the green, the tribal interest is leased by Spotted Hawk Development.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions for the land witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Sam, this is Bruce Hicks. The current spacing that we have out there on these subject lands, is it a 1920 consisting of 16, 17, and 18? Is that one of the spacing units existing?
Yes, the existing safety unit is as the 1920 consisting of 16, 17, 18, and so that would be the northern portion. The southern portion would be a 1600 consisting of 1920 north half 21.
And Mr.
So
Hicks,
the units would be combined.
Mr. Hicks, our engineering witness is going to go through the historical spacing in this area. So, I mean, I certainly don't object to you asking Sam these questions, but we will be going into this in a little bit more detail with the engineering witness.
Thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none. Mr. Adducci, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Joe, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Joseph Adducci,
And Joe, by whom are you employed?
Nessa Consulting Service.
And in this particular matter, you've been retained by Spotted Hawk, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you briefly just, what's your area of expertise?
I'm a staff geoscientist.
Okay. And in that capacity as a geoscientist, have you testified before the commission previously?
Yes.
And you've had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes.
You'd offer the further testimony, this witness, that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Okay, Joel, let's go to the next exhibit in the packet, which is Exhibit 3. And what I'd like you to do is identify Exhibit 3 and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
Yeah, so Exhibit 3 is a subsea structure map taken on the Middle Bakken member across the proposed spacing unit outline here in yellow. And the takeaway from this is really just showing the gradual up-dip structure from west to east of about a half degree with no major structures mapped or anticipated in the area.
All right, and then let's go to Exhibit 4.
Exhibit 4 is our type well reference log showing the Upper Bakken, Middle Bakken, Lower Bakken, and Three Forks tops, and also outlining in yellow our anticipated Middle Bakken target and Upper Three Forks targets across the spacing unit. This reference log, I believe, is about 1.3 miles to the west of the western edge of the spacing unit.
Okay, and perhaps you addressed this and I wasn't listening very carefully, but, and this will become more evident in the engineering testimony, but both the Middle Bakken and the Upper Three Forks are targets for this proposed spacing unit, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. No further questions of the geologic witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Nesset, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Randy, state your full name for the record, please.
Randolph Allen Nessett.
And Randy, by whom are you employed?
I'm employed by Spotted Hawk Development.
In what capacity?
I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer.
And you're an engineer by education and training, is that correct?
Petroleum Engineer, yes, sir.
And you've testified before the commission previously?
Yes, I have.
Had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes, I have.
Offer the further testimony, this witness, that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Okay. Randy, let's go to Exhibit 5 in the packet of exhibits, and what I'd like you to do is first identify that exhibit and then briefly describe what's contained upon it.
Exhibit 5 is a plan view of the proposed spacing unit. The outline in yellow is of the acres proposed in the spacing unit. It is comprised of sections 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and north half of 21. You will see some red and green lines traversing across the proposed spacing units. The red lines is a proposed Three Forks lateral. The green line is a proposed Middle Bakken lateral. Starting from the north end along sections 16, 17, 18, and traversing from west to east is a Three Forks lateral in red, starting at the 660 foot from the north line, and another Three Forks well every 2,560 feet, traversing south across the spacing unit. The green Middle Bakken lateral, first one starts at 1,980 feet from the north line, and another Middle Bakken well every 2,560 feet going south across the spacing unit, with all laterals drilled west to east, and some of them along the west line and south line, starting with a azimuth of 180 and traversing then to the east of an azimuth of 90.
Okay, let's go to the next exhibit, Exhibit 6, and Randy, you heard my response my response as a result of Mr. Hicks's questions about that you might be able to address some of the historical spacing in this area or discussions about spacing. With that in mind, let's go to Exhibit 6, and I'll have you identify that exhibit and then briefly discuss what's contained upon it.
Exhibit 6 is going to be a plan view of some of the previous spacing units designs that we have come to the commission with, and the purpose of this and the next few exhibits is to just give some context to the commission on our thoughts, why, and how we got to where we are. So the plan view on the left side was the original spacing unit. When we first started looking at this, you'll notice that the blue in these pictures depicts the Lake Sakakawea, and there's only a very small portion of the spacing unit that actually has some land in it. We did locate a location there to put a drilling well pad, and the first way we were looking at doing it was to do a radial type pattern. Probably simplest to execute, but does not the best for reservoir coverage. You have too much distance between the toes and you're too close in the heels. So from a reservoir standpoint, it is less than ideal. So we looked at possibly doing laydowns, which would be well bores traversing from straight west to straight east, and that is the picture on the right side of Exhibit 6 that you see. And we looked at going down this path, and this would require a secondary well pad. So now we would have to introduce more surface disturbance, more tanks, more pipes, everything. We looked for locations in Section 13, and unfortunately in Section 13 and in Section 18 there's a significant amount of archaeological. There's cemeteries in here, and so there's a lot to work around here. So there's very, very few locations that will actually work.
Okay, then let's go to the next exhibit, Exhibit 7.
And so Exhibit 7 shows in greater detail sections 13 and 18 to trying to find a surface location that would work. And there is, like I said, significant amount of archaeological issues in this area, and we were actually never able to find a location that was workable.
So the spacing that was proposed, as you had it depicted on Exhibit 6, that was proposed before any extensive study had been done to find a location for the wells that are in, help me out, the lower sections there, which would have been, just give me a minute here, 19, 20, and 21, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. We went through and got the spacing unit, and that's the way it is now with the two separate laydown units before we were ultimately able to find a workable surface location in Section 13.
Okay. Now this is, well, you indicated that this is the, well, skip that question. Let's go on to the next exhibit then, Exhibit 8, and tell us what that is.
Yeah, so Exhibit 8, just as we had talked about, we went through with the spacing unit, the two laydowns ultimately, and did get those spaced. However, like I said, we were never able to actually find a workable location in section 13, just due to the ARCI proximity to a recreation area in the area. And so what we've depicted on this map, and I'll go into a little bit more actually on the next slide, is showing a surface location that is a significant distance away from the spacing unit of 1920 in the north half of 21, which is completely underwater, and there is no land in sections 19, 20, and 21.
Okay. So let's go to Exhibit 9, then Randy, and tell us about this exhibit.
Exhibit 9 shows where we feel that the only possible place that we could get a drilling location in section 13 is, like I said, a significant distance away from the proposed 19, 20, and 21. And in doing so, looking at the downhole aspects, if we were to be able to pursue this type of development, there are already existing Middle Bakken and Three Forks laterals across sections 13 and 14, and so we would have to deal with anti-collision of those wells. We would not be able to land the wellbore and drill across those sections in the Middle Bakken and Three Forks formations, as there's already existing wells in production in there. So given that, now you're talking about drilling a slant vertical from quite a distance away, over 1.5 miles away, across another spacing unit, completely off unit, and then proposing to land inside the 19, 20, and 21, North Africa 21 spacing unit. And that creates some more challenges.
Okay, so you've talked about anti-collision, and you've talked a bit about the fact that you'd have a slant vertical. Let's go to Exhibit 10, and perhaps you can discuss for us just a little bit more about the issues on a slant vertical.
And on Exhibit 10, we're showing on the bottom left-hand side, the off-unit drilling plan would create a significant, tangent, if you will, or deviated vertical compared to, say, an in-unit drilling plan, which is what's shown on the right-hand side, where your vertical can remain fairly straight. And this is significant when it comes time to produce the well. It's likely we'd be able to drill a deviated vertical like this. It's been done before. Completions could be done as well. The issue comes in the production part of the life of the well when you're trying to artificially lift these wells, and it severely limits your options on what kind of an artificial lift system you're allowed to run. Specifically speaking, in the Bakken and Three Forks, generally, a lot of these wells may start off with an electric submersible pump or a gas lift or a jet pump, which can produce at high volumes. When you have high reservoir pressure, after good stimulation, you have a lot of volume to move. And you can employ that type of a artificial lift system in a deviated well like this. But ultimately, since this is a solution gas drawdown type reservoir, the best and most efficient method of artificial lift at a certain point goes to sucker rod lift. And at some point you have to be able to get to a positive displacement type pump in this reservoir. It'd be different if we had a pressure maintenance system within the reservoir, but I don't see where that is being commercially employed in the Bakken and Three Forks at any point now. And so trying to run a sucker rod lift in a significantly deviated well like this, where this would be on the order of 35 to 50 degrees of deviation. It just will not work. On the next, well, I don't want to.
No, that's fine.
Can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
Exhibit 11. I just modeled out real quickly, the deviation of a well from where we think we could get a spacing unit, and you're looking at I put that into a RodStar program to design the sucker rod lift system, and you'll see in the center of this chart that I showed here, max side load. And when we deal with deviation in a sucker rod lift well, one of the metrics that we look at is called side load, and that's the force of the rods pushing up against the side of the tubing. And ultimately that leads to wear. We have metal on metal, that leads to wear of the rods, leads to wear of the tubing. When you get to higher rod side loads, that leads to a lot more rod stretch, and that limits the downhole pump stroke and ultimately the production that comes from that. In the center of this chart, you'll see some numbers in red, and they're upwards of 1,000 or close to 1,100. This is pounds of side load. We're used to dealing with, we'll put rod guides on a sucker rod at 25 pounds of side load. This is talking about upwards of 1,000 pounds of side load. And so it's just not a feasible artificial lift method when you have a highly deviated well like this. And so basically all of that to say that Spotted Hawk isn't comfortable in this type of reservoir being able to actually produce and efficiently lift the fluids from a highly deviated well like this.
Okay, and let's go to Exhibit 12.
So in September of 2022, we took a look at it again, and in this method we had proposed in September. That's been pushed off, I should say continued is probably the right word, until now, and here we are. This is a different type of design. We call it a radial hybrid, where you kind of have a combination of laydowns, yet you land, your vertical part of your wellbore is straight down, and you can land in your formation and do any kind of turns in the lateral. And in this specific, so in that case, you get kind of the best of both worlds. You have a vertical wellbore. It's much easier to run tools in and out of the well, and your artificial lift system and ultimately leads to less wear and tear and better production and economics. On this specific unit that we talked about here, we had included section 15 because there was no wells in section 15, even though it is closer from the east side of the lake.
Okay.
So if we go into...
But just before you
Okay.
go on, what you have done with your proposal that's before the commission today is if you've left out section 15, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so what you have depicted on Exhibit 5 is what you're proposing here today, is correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and the reason section 15 was left out on your new proposal is why?
We faced opposition from some other interest owners of these lands, stating the technical difficulties of us being able to drill that far.
And was there also some discussion about accessing it from the east in wells drilled in 13 and 14?
That's correct.
Okay, just before you go on, are there currently wells in section 13 and 14?
Yes, there are.
How many wells are there?
There are 3 Middle Bakken wells.
Okay, so if someone would have come back and asked for a 1920, you'd have a situation where 13 and 14 are partially depleted, and now you're bringing in 15, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, in your opinion, would that protect correlative rights?
No, that will not protect correlative rights for the owners of Section 15.
And the owners are the tribe, is that correct?
The tribe is the mineral owner, Spotted Hawk is the lessee.
Okay. Let's go on then to the next exhibit, Exhibit 13.
Exhibit 13 indicates in the map is the yellow rectangle outlining sections 13 and 14, whereby a 1280 acre spacing unit was initially developed with 3 wells. The 3 wells are listed in the chart towards the top of the exhibit. In going back down to the map, the red square, the dashed red square, was the section 15 that we were just previously talking about on the previous slides. Over towards the right of the chart, towards the top there, is the production from the 3 wells in sections 13 and 14, and ultimately there's been over 1 million barrels of oil produced from sections 13 and 14. So if you want to bring in section 15 in an overlapping unit, and have royalties split up on a third basis there, that would ultimately not protect correlative rights in our opinion. And it also would be technically challenging to drill as well, drilling through depleted areas like that.
So ideally, your depiction on Exhibit 12 would be the approach you'd like to take with respect to developing this area, is that correct?
That's correct. They are some long wells, but hey, this is, Spotted Hawk was willing to go for it and develop those acreage from the west side.
but because there was opposition from Spotted Hawk, you've now come back with a different approach, leaving out Section 15.
That's correct. We faced opposition, like I previously mentioned, and in the spirit of moving things along here, we're already behind on our drilling schedule here. We need to get these wells drilled in what we're calling our Matty Grace unit, which is the spacing unit before you today. So in the spirit of working with the other interested parties in this area, we had dropped Section 15 so that we can get moving on this.
Okay, let's go to Exhibit 14 then, Randy.
Exhibit 14 is a offset unit 6 miles to the north, developed by Slauson, and what we're just depicting here is the design that we kind of mirrored our Matty Grace development on. It's basically the same sort of design, showing wells that have drilled with a engineered turn in the lateral and were ultimately successful.
So what Spotted Hawk is proposing for its spacing unit here has been tried and tested by Slauson on their torpedo wells. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, let's go to Exhibit 15 then.
So we're back to Exhibit 15 shows our radial hybrid current design, excluding Section 15. That will leave Section 15 impaired. So we are including Section 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, north half of 21, with 8 wells that we, like we said, we mirrored off of the Slauson unit, and we feel we can ultimately execute.
All right, and Exhibit 16?
Exhibit 16 is a model that I developed with Sperry Drilling from Halliburton. As we planned out these wells, some of the questions that had come up is, can we actually drill these wells? Because the total depth on some of the most western and southern wells was 27,000 foot. Now, Spotted Hawk's drilled to 27,000 foot before, but it was in a straight well, not with an engineered turn in the lateral. We designed this well with a 2 degree per hunter build rate. So comparatively, a curve that we use to drill from vertical to horizontal in every single Middle Bakken Three Forks well in North Dakota has a 10 or 12 degrees per hunter build rate. So a 2 degree per hunter build rate is significantly less. It's a very gradual turn, and we did that in order to minimize friction and have a a rate of success to be able to drill that well. And so what this is showing here is that we will require the use of rotary steerable tools instead of a conventional bottom hole assembly with a mud motor and a bent sub. And it's a function of friction and being able to slide drill. Getting tool face and getting the bit to go where you want past that turn at 27,000 foot due to the friction can be rather difficult. And so a rotary steerable tool, being able to steer while continuously rotating your assembly, is what's going to be required here. So this is just modeling and saying a conventional drilling assembly with a mud motor is not going to work. We have to use rotary steerable tools, but those tools are available in North Dakota and are employed.
All right, let's go to 17.
Tripping out from a depth of 27,000 foot on, again, this Ada well, models out at 266,000 pounds. The max tension for the drill pipe that we're using is 400,000 pounds, and 80% safety factor of that will put it at 322,000 pounds. So this is just depicting that we are safely under the max tension of the drill pipe for a trip out scenario from bottom.
And Exhibit 18.
Exhibit 18 depicts the wellbore diagram. We plan to drill the 2,000 foot, actually I believe it's 2150 on here, and set 9 5/8 surface casing. We plan to cement the surface with that surface casing, drill out of surface casing with an 8 3/4 inch hole, drill vertical and curve, and then set 7-inch casing. It'll be a combination string of 29 pound and 32 pound through the salts of high collapse P110. And then we plan to drill out of the 7-inch casing with a 6-inch diameter bit to total depth, and insert a 4.5-inch HCP 110 liner that will be cemented in place. and we ultimately plan to employ a plug and perf completion technique.
Okay, and Exhibit 19.
Exhibit 19 is the reservoir and economics. The reservoir portion is at the top part of this slide. The Middle Bakken is 40 foot thick with a 5% porosity and a 35% water saturation. The Three Forks Bench 1 is 44 feet thick, 7.5% porosity and 45% water saturation. And so we're looking at an oil in place of 24.2 million for Middle Bakken and 45 million for Three Forks. On the lower portion of this slide, you'll see the economics. Some of these wells, the way that we're laying them in here, have longer laterals than others, so we split them up. You have basically a 2.5 mile Middle Bakken, a 2.5 mile Three Forks, a 3 mile Bakken, and a 3 mile Three Forks, as how we have this broke down. And the ultimate breakdown is on the right part under project total is 2.5 mile Middle Bakkens, 3 2.5 mile Three Forks, 2 3 mile Middle Bakkens, and 1 3 mile Three Forks. Project economics are 52% IRR, a PV10 of 57.9 million, and development costs of $94.5 million.
And the final exhibit, Exhibit 20, that's a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of hearings. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Randy, I'm going to direct your attention back just briefly to Exhibits 5 and Exhibit 9. And as I understand it, Exhibit 5 is your proposed drilling pattern, and Exhibit 9 is another approach. It's my understanding that the commission is in receipt of a letter from the tribe indicating that the depiction on Exhibit 5, your approach to developing this area, is too complex, and they prefer the development as it depicted on Exhibit 9. I know you've touched on this and explained it, but could you briefly just describe for us in summary fashion why, as you've depicted the development Exhibit 5, is not as complex as Exhibit 9? I know that's kind of a compound question, but hopefully you understand.
I completely know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Exhibit 5 is what we're proposing at this time. The technical challenges involved in Exhibit 5 are drilling and completing through an engineered turn in the lateral. Otherwise, the rest of the well is fairly straightforward. You're drilling vertically straight down, landing a curve. That's been done many times in the Middle Bakken, and drilling to a total depth of 27,000 foot, which Spotted Hawk has done before. So the difference here is drilling an engineered turn in the lateral, to which we've modeled out with our directional drillers, showing that it can be done. And we've also modeled out getting a liner to bottom, because that can be another potentially sticky issue, no pun intended, and getting the liner to bottom. So we modeled that out, and with the worst well, which is the Ada well, which is the most southern and western well, and that model shows that with the use of heavyweight drill pipe, we can get the liner will be landed to total depth. The design on Exhibit 9, this would require significantly deviated vertical wells. And I don't have a good plan on how to be able to efficiently produce them with an artificial lift system for the life of the well. You can go through the different methods of an electric submersible pump or gas lift or a jet pump. Ultimately, those would work for a little while when you have a lot of production initially. You get about half of the EUR out until you need to switch to a positive displacement type pump. I won't be able to lift the fluids out once we have to switch to a positive displacement type pump. And so that would ultimately lead to premature abandonment and minerals being not extracted.
And then finally, Randy, even though your Exhibit 5 depicts what your request is for, and that you could drill it on that pattern more simply than on Exhibit 9, if the commission were to determine that Section 15 should be added into this pattern, you wouldn't have any objection to that. Is that correct?
No objection.
Okay. In your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, that's correct.
No further questions of this witness. We would offer the exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Randy, on Exhibit 5, 8 wells, and the other pattern obviously has probably double that. Is that, what's the reason for the difference in the spacing between laterals?
The biggest difference, and probably easiest to address, the location that has been selected and found in section 18 is 370 feet by 570 feet. It comes down to the size of the well pad. It's surrounded by kerns on 3 sides. It's not getting any bigger. I'm not comfortable putting any more wells on a pad that size due to operational safety and restrictions. Ultimately, I'm of the belief that in this part of the reservoir, by drilling towards the east here, you're in a portion of the Middle Bakken Reservoir where you are actually decreasing reservoir pressure as you move from, say, deeper parts of the reservoir from the west. We move to the southeast. I'm of the belief that this is the proper amount of wells to effectively drain this reservoir, and I believe that if you put any more wells in there, you will have interference between the wells. Now, these wells will cost more than a typical, say, straight lateral, just due to the fact that we have to have rotary steerable tools to create and drill these engineered turns in the lateral. Given that you have increased costs in the wells to effectively drill these, we can't have wells interfering with each other and ultimately reducing EUR per well. We need the EUR to be the full amount for each wells in order to keep these economic.
As you have it depicted on Exhibit 5, would you batch drill all 8 wells?
At this time, we're probably looking at doing 4 wells first and then 4 wells later. Ultimately, if commodity prices make sense, and we have the ability to, we would like to do 8 wells. Me personally, I would like to do 8 wells, but I have to say that 4 wells now and 4 wells later must remain a possibility for us. Given that, we would do the wells across 16, 17, and 18 first, and then do the lower wells second.
So if the lower wells are never drilled, how does this protect Corralda rights?
I believe the plan is to drill all the wells.
What would be the timing between the 4 and 4?
4 wells in 2023, 4 wells in 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Randy, if we did have a year requirement to drill that second set of 4 wells, would you object to the commission bringing you in and reducing the size of that spacing unit to a 1920, or excuse me, yeah, 1920 consisting of 16, 17, and 18?
Can I just a second? You're talking if the other 4 wells weren't drilled, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I'm just not certain I'm prepared to answer. I guess I don't know how would we be able to drill 1920 and north half of 21 if that were the case?
If it was apparent that you weren't going to be drilling the lower set of wells, the commission's not going to wait forever for you to drill those wells.
Okay.
Typically, when we have a large spacing unit like this and there's problems getting it developed because of topo access and so forth, there's stipulations that say you must drill these many wells by a certain date. And if you don't, we bring that company in and have them explain the situation, and on occasion, we may actually reduce that spacing unit back to whatever we feel is being drained by the current wells.
Okay.
So in this case, it would be totally possible, the commission may say, well, that lower 2.5 sections is gonna be removed from the spacing unit from this date forward. And in that case, you would have to come in with another development plan for that lower half. I just want to know how committed you are to coming in within a year and drilling that second set of wells.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't know if that's up for me to answer.
Maybe a supplement would be wise then
Okay,
to address it.
understand. We'll talk with management about that, Mr. Hicks, and
Okay.
provide a supplement.
You know, looking at Exhibit 8, you said that that site in Section 13 is not viable because of a number of issues. The letter that the tribe wrote indicated they thought there was a location in Section 13 that is viable. You've also got a number of other issues with production and artificial lift and so forth later on in life in the well. Is it really not getting a viable location at the surface, or is it mainly the artificial lift issues on producing later in life?
Mainly artificial lift issues producing later in life.
The tribe also indicated that, I'm looking at Exhibit 9, that they wanted the north half of 21 in a stand-up 1920 consisting of 21, 28, and 33. So I think your testimony was they wanted this, Exhibit 9 is how they wanted this developed, but actually their letter says they don't want the north half in the space unit either, right?
Right, they just said that north half of 21 could be developed off of a pad in Section 33, I believe, off of what we call Independence Point. Spotted Hawk has looked for a location in that area. We do not have a location identified there. Also, your setbacks from the lake and landowners that aren't acceptable to development, it's rather difficult, so we're not very far along on that one. But you're talking about the north half of 21, that's in the very center of probably the widest part of the lake. It's long from whichever direction you look at it. We have an ability to get it from Section 18. So in our standpoint, it's long from there, it's long from Independence Point, it's long from everywhere. And we have a spacing or a well pad that we've found that is executable. We might as well get some more acreage developed now, because I don't know when we'll be able to get from Independence Point. That's a different issue.
Who's the potential operator of that spacing unit?
Independence Point
Yep.
spacing unit? Either Spotted Hawk or Cord.
Or who?
Or Cord Energy.
Okay. Has there been any talks with Cord on developing that unit? Probably.
No, there's wells you need to, it's gonna be challenging. There's wells that you need to cross down there. So if Spotted Hawk develops it, you're looking at, from there you're looking at 3 mile laterals. So whether you're 3 miles from the Matty Grace pad in Section 18 or 3 miles from Independence Point, on our concern, it doesn't really matter. Either way is challenging. But there's wells that need to be crossed from Independence Point because you can't get very close to that spacing unit. Again, a similar type situation where you only have a little bit of dirt in the spacing unit, the rest of it's underwater.
On Exhibit 13, you're showing the development there from possibly the east, I suppose is what you're getting at.
Yes, sir.
Earlier on in exhibit, you said that Section 15 is stranded, but actually 13, 14, and 15 is a laydown 1920, right?
It is, that's correct. There's an overlapping unit, I think, that's currently in place.
And when that was put in place, were all three of these Middle Bakken wells drilled across 13 and 14?
I don't remember. I think so.
And Oasis is currently operator of those three wells.
Yes, that's correct.
Are they planning on drilling possibly like a Three Forks well out to capture that through section 15?
They told us Middle Bakken wells.
Okay. But Spotted Hawk believes that Three Forks is also viable in this area.
Yes, we believe so, yeah.
So have you talked to Cord since Oasis merged with Whiting to find out if they still have plans to try to develop 15?
They haven't told us anything different. Last time we talked with them, I think, was late last summer. Oh, it would have been August of 2022. They had sent emails to us indicating that they were planning for, I think it was 4 Middle Bakken wells in that unit. 3 or 4, I'm going off of memory here. I haven't got any indication from them that that has changed. But when we had section 15 included from the west side in the previous applications, they did object to that, as they had planned to get it from the east side.
Okay. You talked about production methods and the problems with running rods in highly deviated wellbores. Some operators have tried putting rollers on their rods, using Rotoflex pumps that are slow everything down with the long stroke. Has there been any advances or innovation in production methods to produce through rod pump on highly deviated wells? I mean, I would imagine there's some advances from 20 years ago when this was being used by Meridian at the time.
Certainly, and there's plenty of crooked wells in North Dakota, don't get me wrong. And I work very closely with an associate I actually used to work with at Hess Corporation. He sells fiberglass rods. So fiberglass rods have come a long way. They're employed a lot with Rotoflex or long stroke units in deviated wells. And that kind of helps alleviate your downhole, lack of plunger stroke issue, and some of it gives you the ability to pump through deviated wells. The highest that he's gone to is 27 degrees with a rod pump well, which is significantly deviated. At that point, you're going to have a lot of workovers. I mean, that's just a significant amount of rod tubing friction. Sure, you can rod guide it up. Rod guides are not cheap. All this costs more money. And ultimately, it's more friction just by putting more rod guides in, so more friction means less downhole stroke, etc. And like I said, talking with him, he sells a lot of fiberglass rods and tough wells in that situation. I said, what's the max you've designed and sold up to? He said 27 degrees. He said he sells a lot of fiberglass rods to that well. I said, well, I got to go to 49 degrees. Can you help me out? He said, it's not going to work. I mean, we ran it in RodStar, and it's just, there's too much side load force. You won't get any downhole stroke. If we were under, say, 20 degrees, sure, I'd take a crack at it. We could take a look at it. But this is, you were significantly a long distance away from that spacing unit.
As far as gas capture goes, is there a lot of takeaway in this area, or are you going to be limited on the amount of gas that you can sell?
There is sufficient capacity. Right now, I believe it's tight. I'm through April from what they were telling me. After that, it should free up a little bit. So by the time we would bring these wells online, we plan to spud in, it looks like probably July now. By the time we brought these wells online, they do have sufficient capacity. The gas from this area gets gathered by Paradigm. It's ultimately transported up to MPLX Robinson Lake. The Robinson Lake system, from what they were telling us, was rather full, at capacity. But I think they had tied into the outrigger system to relieve some of the capacity off of that system. And so I think that was done now or getting close to being done. Either way, it'd be done by the time that we get these wells online. So they're telling us they had sufficient capacity for our wells coming online.
We were told at one point that that tie-in would happen in June of last year. Did it not happen?
I'm really not certain, I guess. I don't know. When I for some reason, in April of 23 time frame sticks in my head as opening up some capacity, so, and maybe it already did. I guess I really shouldn't. I'm not certain.
Okay, thank you.
Randy, Bruce asked for that supplemental regarding the potential downspacing. When you provide that, I suggest you also consider a change or a alternate proposal for which wells you might be willing to drill first in the spacing unit.
Okay.
If you could do something like drill all of the Middle Bakken or all of the Three Forks wells as proposed here as your 4 well batches, I think that would satisfy the state's concern on the spacing unit being developed as well. So alternate potential plan to consider.
Okay.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none? I did want to note, we talked a lot about the tribes letter. There's also the Bureau of Land Management letter, just for the record, that is incorporated into this. I don't know if you had any comments, but it seems to pretty much just be.
No, I don't think we need to comment any further. I think Mr. Nesset responded to all the issues in there except one, and I think Mr. Hicks cleared that up with a question, so I think we've addressed everything we want to address.
Sure. So letters are part of the record, so I just wanted to make sure a note of that. And there was a request for supplement, so.
Yeah, March 1 again.
March 1. The record will remain open until March 1st for supplement. Is there anything further on this matter?
Nothing further.
And that will conclude the hearing in case number 29868. Let's see here. The time is 10:11 a.m. Let's take a quick break and meet back here at 10:20.
Thank you.
right, and we are back on the record, reopening case number 29868. Again, this was application of Spotted Hawk Development LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Van Hook, Bakken Pool, McLean, and Dunn Counties, ND, so as to create and establish an overlapping 3520 acre space unit comprised of sections 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and the north half of section 21, Township 150 North, Range 91 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 8 horizontal wells on said proposed overlapping 3520 acre space unit and such other and further relief as appropriate. We are reopening this case for some additional comments. Make sure your mic is on, and why don't you go ahead and give us your name, your address, and then your profession.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and I apologize for standing up at the end of the case and allowing me to submit comments on behalf of the tribe. My name is Catherine Everett. I'm the Energy Liaison to Chairman Fox and a representative of MHA Nation.
Thank you, Ms. Everett. I'm going to swear you in here before we get any more comments. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. My address is 404 Frontage Road, Newtown, North Dakota. And my background is petroleum engineering tech, and I've been working in the oil and gas industry for a little over 8 years.
Thank you.
Okay. I do have one request, if it's allowed, if I could phone in our legal. I was made aware it wasn't, but
So the commission normally requires 24 hours before we allow anyone to phone in, I guess.
okay.
I don't
That's
believe
fine.
we can-
I thought I would just ask, and I can just quickly summarize this. I was notified, made aware that you guys did receive the BLM's letter in our stance. So just to summarize, the tribe does not support this spacing unit due to some concerns we have with the drilling plans, and the lack of experience and ability SHD has given the tribe does concern us. We do believe there are more suitable plans that can be found through continued discussions between the tribe and SHD, and would request to continue working with them before moving on with any spacing unit requests and approvals.
And is that to conclude your comments?
Yes.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Anything further in this matter? Your response, Mr.
Nothing
Smith.
further.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That will conclude the hearing in case number 29868.
Nice to meet you.
Moving on. Case number 29869. Application of Enerplus Resources USA Corp. for an order authorizing a setback variance of 50 feet from the tank batteries for the 2 backup diesel generators to generate power for communication equipment for oil and gas wells drilled and completed or to be drilled and completed in Section 31 and Section 36, Township 149 North, Range 95 West, and Section 29, Township 149 North, Range 93 West, Eagle Nest Bakken Pool, and Mandaree Bakken Pool, Mackenzie and Dunn Counties, ND, as an exception to the provisions of Section 43-02-03-28 of the NDAC and providing such other and further relief. This case is dismissed. Moving on. Case number 29870. Application of Coda Resources Operating LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Fertile Valley Bakken Pool, Divide County, ND, so as to create and establish the following: a 1920 acre space unit comprised of sections 14, 23, and 26, Township 160 North, Range 103 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on said proposed 1920 acre space unit. 2 1920 acre space units comprised of sections 2, 11, and 14, and sections 23, 26, and 35. Township 160 North, Range 102 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 4 horizontal wells on each proposed 1920 acre spacing unit. An overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of sections 16, 21, and 28, Township 160 North, Range 102 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 4 horizontal wells on said proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit. And an overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit comprised of sections 17, 20, and 29, Township 160 North, Range 102 West, authorizing the drilling of a total not to exceed 2 horizontal wells on said proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit, and or such further relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in case 29870 on behalf of Coda Resources Operating LLC. We intend to call 3 witnesses in this matter. Ms. Allie Schuster will be offering some land testimony. Ms. Catherine Pfeiffer will be offering some geologic testimony. and Mr. Jake Hervey. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Mr. Jake Hervey will be offering some engineering testimony. Ms. Schuster and Ms. Pfeiffer are appearing with us in the hearing room, and Mr. Hervey will be appearing by telephone.
Ms. Schuster, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief? I will. Or please repeat into the mic there.
Oh, yes.
Can you pull the mic maybe just a little bit closer? There you go, thanks. Ally, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Yes, it's Alex Marie Schuster,
And by whom are you employed?
Coda Resources,
What capacity?
as a landman.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
I have not.
What I'd like you to do is briefly highlight for the examiner and the commission staff your educational background and work experience.
Okay, great. I graduated from the University of Oklahoma in 2012 with energy management and finance degree. I worked for EOG Resources as a landman for 8.5 years before moving to Coda, working there for 2.5 years as a landman as well.
Okay. In preparation for today's hearing, have you made a thorough study and review of all the relevant land matters concerning Coda's request in these two cases?
I have?
And have you prepared or had prepared under your control and supervision some exhibits you intend to sponsor?
Yes.
Offer the further testimony of this witness out of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Ally, let's go to the packet of exhibits. Let's go first to Exhibit L1, briefly discuss what's contained on that exhibit.
Yes, Exhibit L1 is a regional locator map showing the 5 units in question in this case number. They're just north of the Williams and Divide County line in Divide County.
And Exhibit L2.
Exhibit L2 is a location map zoomed in showing the 5 units in question on our acreage map.
All right, and L3.
Exhibit L3 is a focus on the proposed 1920 in sections 14, 23, and 26 of 160-103. Our proposed working interest in the 1920, our current working interest in the 1920 is 34.8% working interest.
Okay, and L4.
Exhibit L4 describes our working interest in the underlying, Exhibit L4 is the DSU located in section 17, 20, and 29 of 160-102. It shows that our current working interest in the proposed 1920 is 94.6%. Exhibit L5 is a zoom in showing the working interest in the underlying existing 1280s. Our working interest in sections 17 and 20 is 92.6%, and our working interest in sections 29 and 32 is 97.2%.
Okay, and L6.
L6 is a zoom in of the proposed 1920 spacing unit in section 16, 21, 28, 160-102. Our current working interest in the proposed 1920 is 96.4%.
Okay, and then Exhibit L7.
Exhibit L7 shows that the working interest in the existing 1280 in section 16 and 21 is 94.5%, and the existing working interest in the existing 1280 of the DSU in sections 28 and 33 is 97.9%.
And then let's go to L8.
L8 shows the proposed 1920 spacing unit in sections 211 and 14 of 160-102. Our current working interest in the 1920 proposed is 60.1%.
And then L9.
Exhibit L9 is the 1920 proposed in sections 23, 26, and 35 of 160-102. Our current working interest is 53.68%.
And Ally, in those cases where Coda owns less than a majority interest, will Coda negotiate with other working interest owners in the proposed spacing unit to determine who the operator should be?
Yes.
No further questions of the land witness.
Are there any questions from commission staff?
Ellie, are you involved in picking spacing units and what sections are going to be in the spacing units and the development of the area itself, or is there somebody else that would be better handling that?
I would think that our reservoir engineer might be better at describing those decisions.
You mean how they're selected, Bruce? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'll give him a heads up by making a statement. Typically, the commission back in 2010 went in and tried to set up a uniform development plan. So we could have energy corridors across the state. We could have roads in certain areas, east-west or north-south, however it was being developed. Typically, stand-up 1280s at the time were done. And these stand-up 1280s fit within the township. If you worked with EOG, you probably understand that a little bit on how things were set up. We did have some operators come in and wanted to stagger spacing units across township lines that were correction lines. Created a lot of issues. In this area, we've got stand-up 1280s that fit. You know, you got section 1 and 12 and so forth, you know, as a 1280, and then all the way through, and you have 3 stand-up 1280s in the township. What you're doing is 3 out of the 5 are not in compliance with that thought process and development pattern. On the east side, you've got 2, 11, and 14, and 23, 26, and 35. That's what we like to see. That's great. But when you start looking at the others, especially going north, if somebody wants to develop these on 3-mile laterals, now we've got a staggered township line where we're bringing in a section to create that last 19, 20 acre spacing unit, and you've got to deal with that offset. The last thing we want is operators just going in on their acreage and saying, we own this acreage, this is what we want to drill. We basically required operators to start changing out their acreage and trading with others, or maybe purchasing additional or just carrying that interest. So having said that, the questions are going to come up later in testimony on how these are getting developed, because we certainly don't want areas that are sparsely developed like this to start out on the wrong foot, and now we've got energy corridors that are all messed up, and we don't have pipelines, and we have, you know, that can go down a certain road, and we have residents in the area that are used to be able to going down roads, and now we've got energy corridors that are no longer going to be able to be used, or you're using all the roads because now you've got wells a mile apart, and it really starts creating some issues that we don't like to see. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but
I'll let Jake comment on it
yeah.
later.
Thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, move on to Ms. Pfeiffer. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Catherine, state your name for the record, please.
Catherine Pfeiffer.
And Catherine, by whom are you employed?
I am a geologist at Coda Resources.
And in that capacity, have you testified before the commission previously?
I have.
Were your qualifications considered that of an expert?
Yes.
Offer the further testimony as that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Catherine, let's go to G1 in the packet of exhibits. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, so this is a structure map on the Middle Bakken member. So it's subsea TVD. The contour interval is 25 feet. And it's showing that as you move from the northwest to the southeast, you are getting deeper structurally. And the cross-section on there, 8A prime, the northwest to the southeast, will be on the next exhibit.
Okay, let's go to G2.
So G2 is that cross-section I mentioned. So 8A prime is just type log, a quad combo, showing the Bakken and Three Forks formation. So it starts at the lower lodgepole and then goes to the Bird Bear. And we'll be targeting the Middle Bakken.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, Mr. Herbie, can you hear me?
Bruce, scare him off.
Maybe.
Jake, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Jake, state your full name for the record, please.
Jake Lewis Hervey,
And Jake, by whom are you employed?
Coda Resources.
In what capacity?
as a reservoir engineer.
And in that capacity, have you testified for the commission previously?
I have.
Had your qualifications accepted as that of an expert?
Yes.
Offer the further testimony of this witness that of an expert.
The testimony will be received as that of an expert.
Jake, let's go to E1 in the packet. Can you tell us what E1 is?
E1 is a layout of the proposed 1920 spacing unit showing the one currently proposed middle Bakken space.
And E2?
E2 is the next 1920 spacing unit showing the two proposed middle Bakken wells and the existing well bores.
And E3?
E3 shows 4 middle Bakken proposed wells in the spacing unit, the 1920 unit with the existing wells as well.
And E4?
E4 shows the 4 proposed middle Bakken wells in the proposed spacing unit.
And E5?
Again, shows the 4 proposed middle Bakken wells in the proposed spacing unit.
And then let's go to the next exhibit, which is E6. Can you tell us what that is?
Yep, so E6 is just our typical middle Bakken wellbore diagram, showing our 9 5/8 surface casing, 7-inch intermediate casing, and 4.5-inch tieback liner, TDing at about 19,800 feet total.
How many frac stages do you anticipate?
Roughly 70 frac stages.
Okay, and then let's go to the next exhibit, Exhibit E7.
E7 is just typical reservoir properties for this DSU. So we have our fluid properties with a 42-degree API oil gravity. We see a formation volume factor of roughly 1.5. The middle Bakken and the upper Three Forks are both reservoir contributors here. At middle Bakken's at 52 feet, 6.5% porosity, 64% water saturation. Upper Three Forks is roughly 16 feet in this area, 7% porosity, 29% water saturation. In our 1920 DSUs, we're showing about 20 million barrels of oil in place, with a single well EUR of roughly 615 MBO. And then we're showing kind of at a maximum of the 4 wells that we're proposing here, your recovery factor is 12%, which is well within the bounds of what's possible.
And E8.
E8 is just kind of type well economics for our middle Bakken wells. We have kind of an initial rate, roughly 750 barrels of oil per day. That rate stays relatively flat for the first 8 months, and then we begin our decline profile. You can see at kind of a $70 oil price environment, we generate reasonable returns on these wells.
And then I think it's labeled as E9, perhaps not. We'll label it as E9. Is that a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of hearings?
That's correct.
In your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect correlative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
No further questions. Offer the exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Jake, on E1, is there a reason why you're only proposing 1 well on this 1920 in comparison to the other 1920s that have 3 to 4 wells?
This DSU, sorry. Oh, I just hear the echo. So yeah, we're just proposing 1 well here to establish the spacing unit and drill it as kind of a delineation test. And then we would come back and increase the density of this unit upon successful test.
And what would be the time frame to come back?
Within a year.
Okay, thanks.
Jake, on exhibit, well, we'll just take exhibit 2 and 3. You're depicting 2 wells in the east half on exhibit 2 and 2 wells in the east half on exhibit 3, but they look like they're spaced differently. What's the reason for that?
So the difference there is the vintage of the wells that we're offsetting. So in E3, we're offsetting a legacy well drilled by Newfield back in 2012 timeframe with a small completion. And in E2, we're offsetting a well that we as CODA drilled with a higher density, larger fluid volume completion. So it's just draining a larger area versus the other well.
And then on exhibit E4 and E5, can you explain what the difference is in the spacing on those, between those two?
So E4 and E5 will have the same effective well-to-well spacing. So it'll be 550 feet off of the east and west lines, and then the middle Bakken wells will be spaced equally within the remaining area. So I guess the stick on the westernmost stick on E5 should be a little bit further west there.
So they're intended to be identical.
Correct.
And in this case, E4 and E5, will you drill the wells to the north and the wells to the south from common pads?
We will. So there will be multiple pads to accommodate the total development, but we try to lay out every pad as developing roughly 3 to 4 wells to the north and 3 to 4 wells to the south.
I don't have any other questions. I assume that he's going to have to answer Bruce's question.
Yeah, do we want to look at B1 just to show the whole area? Does that work? Can you guys that one?
Jake, this is Bruce Hicks. I do have a couple questions. It was my understanding that your business practice in this area was to drill a disposal well on every spacing unit. Is that still your plan?
So as we're moving into more of a development phase from our initial delineation phase, we are contemplating and are in the process of getting produced water right-of-ways with the local landowners to connect multiple of these pads together. We are still permitting SWD wells in conjunction with our Middle Bakken development wells on pad. And we will have some additional on-pad SWD wells, but we'll also be working to connect them into a system.
Okay. And, I briefly mentioned the development plan that the commission likes to see, especially on 1920s. And in this area, we've got very limited development in the area, although CODA has a fairly extensive acreage leasehold in the area. So my question is, did you look at stand-up 1920s where you could place 2 of them in the township like you did on the east side, consisting of 2, 11, 14, and 23, 26, and 35? If we look over to the west side where you have 14, 23, and 26, if an operator wanted to drill another 3-mile lateral north of this spacing unit, proposed spacing unit, you would have to grab the section north, which is going across the staggered township line. And like I talked about before, the commission wants to set up energy corridors where we have industry going down certain roads. You have wellheads lined up, 3 miles apart or 6 miles apart, however they are drilled. And you don't have wellheads located every mile. If we start overlapping 1920s just based on acreage and not not allowing them to be stacked in the township, we're going to end up with energy corridors that don't really make any sense as far as the uniform development plan. So I'd like for you to just explain, you know, why you've picked the spacing units on the 1920s that you have, and why you weren't consistent like you were on the east side.
Yeah, I can go into that. So for the spacing units that are kind of offsetting the typical energy corridor, it's really to accommodate our available surface locations and existing pipelines. So if we're looking at the units that are shown in E1 and E2, we already have an existing low-pressure gas pipeline that goes across that area that connects to an existing pad. I think you can see a couple of the existing wells that are going through 1522, and then we have a pad, basically section 16, that already has gas pipelines. So we're adding additional pads there and are proposing to connect those to our existing pipeline. You did allude to going north across the township lines. That is the next case, is that unit in question where we will be proposing a 1920 that does cross the township line, and that's going to be so that we can get to basically just drill north and south from the same pad and stay in line with where we're seeing our gas and potentially water pipe corridor.
Well, I guess it kind of begs for you to submit a map showing the gas and water infrastructure in the area that you indicate that you want to utilize. I guess you didn't talk about water, but mainly the gas takeaway, and show at least the low pressure lines in the area so we can make some sense out of how you've set these up.
We can add that, absolutely. And it is it's an internal CODA system.
You know, just be aware that the commission did set up some spacing units that staggered township lines way early in development. I want to say it was 2009, and we really had to pay for that throughout the entire area when we were trying to develop things further. So it certainly is not going to be very easy for you to get something, especially across the staggered township line. And if you have to run a line to accommodate stand-up 1920s in the same township, it may be well worth it in the future when you finally develop this area and figure out how you're going to run all the lines in it. But if you'll submit that supplement, we'll take a look at that.
Okay, yeah, we'll submit that as a supplement.
What's the timing on, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say really what is driving this is just the kind of, this is on the edge of the Bakken development area, and what we're realizing is that the 1920 units, the 3-mile laterals, are what make, what allow this area to work economically. And we're just trying to work, within those existing kind of what we've already set up as the pipelines for the existing 1280 DSUs. So that's kind of how it started.
If you look at go ahead.
Oh, no, you could look at that additional exhibit.
Looking at your Exhibit 8, you're showing that you're going to drill these wells for $10 million. You've got recoverable reserves of 615,000 barrels and a 9-month payout. Those are pretty good economics, no matter where you're at in the basin, much less over on the edge. So if you believe in those, I would imagine there'll be a lot of development in the area.
That is what we are planning. And we do have a broader area, like development map that we could go through if that's helpful as well.
What's the timing on drilling these? What spacing units are going to be drilled first?
So we are picking up a rig in the beginning of March and proposing to drill the spacing unit that are composed of E1 and E2 first. So it'll be the two that are staggered from how you would like to potentially see them. And basically what that is, that's a spacing test. So that'll be our first spacing development in this area. And then and you can see that we have existing wells there. And then the other 3 units without existing wells are going to be delineation tests for future spacing development.
E1 doesn't have one in it.
Oh, did I get the wrong one? Sorry, E2 and E3. That's my fault.
So when you drill these, are you going to drill all 4 wells on E3, or will you batch drill all 4, or will you just batch drill 2?
So we have 2 pads that will accommodate the development shown in E3, and we will drill all 4 of those wells, as well as the 2 wells shown in E2. So that'll be a 6-well spacing test in our kind of proven area.
Okay, thank you.
Jake, make sure when you, on your supplement, you put the surface locations on the map for these wells.
Okay, we will do that.
Jake, just a couple additional questions. If you're granted those spacing units kind of in the middle here, 17, 20, and 29, 16, 21, and 28, you're leaving sections 32 and 33 out of existing development. And they already have wells on them on the 1280s. What are your plans for development further to the south of these spacing units?
We plan additional 1920 spacing units to the south.
You've already testified that the next case is indicating a plan 1920 to the north, but maybe as a supplemental in this case, could you also provide kind of an overall development scenario in the whole area that would indicate how everything ties together?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, I guess
March 1.
March 1 again? All right. The record will remain open until March 1st for supplemental information. Anything further in this
Nothing
hearing?
further in this case.
All right, that will conclude the hearing in case number 29870. Moving on. Case number 29871. Application of Coda Resources Operating LLC for an order amending the field rules for the Daneville and/or Fertile Valley Bakken Pool, Divide County, ND, so as to create and establish an overlapping 1920 acre space unit comprised of Section 32, Township 161 North, Range 102 West, and Sections 2 and 11, Township 160 North, Range 103 West, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on said proposed overlapping 1920 acre spacing unit and/or such further relief. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Lawrence Bender, P.O. Box 1855, Bismarck, appearing in this case 29871 on behalf of Coda Resources Operating LLC. We'll be calling the same 3 witnesses in this case as we did in the previous case.
All right, Ms. Schuster, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Ally, Exhibit 1.
Exhibit L1 is the regional locator map showing this unit which traverses the Fertile Valley and Daneville townships.
L2.
Exhibit L2 is zoomed in, showing the unit on the CODA acreage map.
And L3.
Exhibit L3 shows our working interest, or our working interest in the proposed unit, which is 88.95% in the 1920. And Exhibit L4, shows the working interest in the existing 1280 in sections 29 and 32 of 161-102, which is 89.7%, and our existing working interest in the 1280 in sections 2 and 11 of 160-103, which is 85.5%.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none? Ms. Pfeiffer, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Catherine, G1.
Yes, so G1 is going to be a structure map. It is on the Middle Bakken member subsea TVD. The contour interval is 25 feet. And highlighted is going to be, again, a cross-section from A to A prime. That'll be on the next exhibit.
Okay, let's go to G2.
G2 is going to be 2 type logs with a quad combo showing the Bakken and the Three Forks. So it starts at the lower lodgepole and then into the Bird Bear.
No further questions.
Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none? Mr. Harvey, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Jake, E1.
E1 shows the proposed 1920 spacing unit with the proposed middle Bakken well.
And E2.
E2 shows the typical wellbore diagram with our 5/8 surface casing, 7-inch intermediate, and 4.5-inch high back liner.
Number of frac stages.
70.
Okay, E3.
E3 shows our typical middle Bakken economics here, showing reasonable return.
Okay, and E4.
E4 shows our typical reservoir parameters in this area with middle Bakken and Three Forks net thickness porosity saturation, and representing our maximum recovery factor for full development in this area.
And what we'd like to have marked as E5, is that a gas capture affidavit that the commission typically requires in these sorts of matters?
Yes.
No further questions. Jake, in your opinion, will the requested relief prevent waste, protect relative rights, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes.
No further questions. Offer the exhibits.
Exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Jake, once again, just the one well. Why is that?
This is a further proof of concept in this area.
Okay, so if you fully develop this area, how many more wells would you add to this 1920?
In full development, it would be 2 more.
Okay, can you submit a supplement of what that would look like?
Yes.
Good, thanks.
Lawrence, I suggest we incorporate the record from the previous case. We don't have to go through all the same
No objection.
issues.
The record from case number 29870 will be incorporated into the hearing in this case.
And then when, Jake, on your supplement that you're gonna submit, include the lands for both cases in that supplement.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll make it all together.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
Jake, this is Bruce Hicks. So tell us your thought process on why you grabbed section 32 instead of 14 in this case.
So in this is to accommodate multi-well pad development with a DSU that's in the previous case. This allows us to use one pad location to drill both north and south in this area and be on our planned pipeline corridor.
I guess I don't understand. You mean it grabs, I mean, what's the development pattern that's going to allow you to drill north and south? Where's your surface location?
So the surface location here is in 11, and so it also accommodates one of the 1920 spacing units that goes south below section 11 in the previous.
But you could have also taken 2, 11, and 14 and put a surface location between 14 and 23 and drilled another 1920 south, including 23, 28, or 26, and 35, right?
Yeah, it's going to be the same reason as for our other DSUs. So this puts our surface locations in a row where we have existing gas pipeline coming to the north portion of section 16 and 17, and we're planning to just extend that west from there as we also extend it to the east and make one pipeline corridor there.
What's the offset between sections when you go from section 2 up into section 32?
I believe it's roughly 500 feet. I'd have to get the exact number though.
So when you drill across that staggered township line, you don't plan to offset your well, you're just going to drill at a 360-degree azimuth, is that right?
For this first well, that's correct. And then additionally, when we come back and increase the density, the well that we'll have to accommodate for the stagger and the additional 2 wells and put a tangent into the lateral.
So do you plan to utilize Crusoe on your locations for gas capture?
So what we're planning is, so we have several miles of low pressure poly pipelines installed for gas gathering. And so we're bringing that down to a central location where we're stripping liquids out with a mobile recovery unit currently. Coldstream is the vendor there. And then we're delivering the residue gas to Crusoe at a central location. And then we also have them deployed on several individual well sites too.
So you're not hooked to a gas processing plant?
No, just the mobile plant now, and we're working with, there's basically 3 offsetting gatherers, which are One Oak, Kinder Morgan, and Steel Reef, and we're working with all of them on a kind of longer-term compressor station pipeline to a gas plant solution.
Is there existing infrastructure from any one of those 3 gas processors in the area?
There's nothing on the our acreage footprint. There's existing low pressure gathering to the east of the Fertile Valley area on One Oak, and to the south of kind of our southern development area with Kinder Morgan. The issues with those are just line pressure and capacity on it's the furthest reaches of their low pressure systems. So they don't have capacity on the low pressure systems, basically.
On your current development plan, is Crusoe and Coldstream going to be able to capture and utilize all of your gas you're producing?
So we think that the combination of Crusoe and Coldstream will capture everything that is required on our increased density DSUs.
On your supplement map, if One Oak, Kinder Morgan, and Steel Reef have, I would like to see at least, if they're not within the immediate area that you're going to send me on the map, at least show where the closest connections are on their infrastructure.
Sure, yeah, we can do that. And then I'll also just include that we have been in discussions with all of them, but the low pressure connects haven't been possible to date. Just due to their existing commitment to their current shippers.
Ellie, are you currently trying to obtain additional acreage in that township where it says Daneville on L2? North of this area?
We are actively working on acquiring leasehold in our main box here in Fertile Valley, and to some extent in the southern portion of Daneville.
Okay, so there could be additional acreage that CODA is going to develop themselves outside of what you're asking for in this area?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jake, similar questions to previously, but your development plan for the remainder of the 1280 of 32 and 29, how do you plan to develop 29 further?
With additional 1920 going north.
That looks like it would go well outside of the acreage that you've got depicted as CODA-controlled acreage at this point.
Yes, with the additional acquisition mentioned.
Okay. Make sure you include that in the supplemental that I asked for regarding the full development plan in the area. Include both the spacing units on that and, if you would, the rough placement of the wells that you plan to drill in a full development type scenario.
Yep, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, March 1st again, Mr. Bender?
Yes.
All right. The record will remain open for supplement until March 1st. Anything further in this matter, Mr. Bender?
Nothing further.
All right, that will conclude the hearing in case number 29871. Moving on. Case number 29872, application of Continental Resources, Inc. for an order authorizing the use of double-wall open receptacles designed for containment in the event of an inner tank failure, or storage of produced water to allow fracture stimulation of the various wells in the Jim Creek Field, Dunn County, ND, as an exception to the provisions of Section 43-02-03-19.3 of the NDAC and such other and further relief. This case is dismissed. That's all for the regular docket, and just to be sure that this one gets read in, I'll move to the supplemental docket. Case number 29885, application of Enerplus Resources Corporation for an order amending the field rules for the Gregory Buttes and/or South Fork Bakken Pool, so to create and establish an overlapping 3840 acre space unit comprised of sections 4, 5, 8, 9, 16, and 17, Township 148 North, Range 93 West, Dunn County, ND, authorizing the drilling of a horizontal well on or near the section line between the existing space units of said proposed overlapping 3840 acre spacing unit, and/or such other and further relief as appropriate. This case is continued to March. And that will conclude today's hearings.